Good evening, everybody. This is Steve Lionel, Vice Chair of the City of Nashua Zoning Board of Adjustment, and this is the February 28th, 2023 Zoning Board meeting. I'm filling in for Mary Ellen McKay, Chair, who cannot be with us tonight. This evening's meeting will be conducted in a hybrid format. The meeting is accessible in person in the third floor auditorium of Nashua City Hall, 229 Main Street, and via Zoom at the link posted in all public meeting agendas. Attendance via telephone is available using the Zoom connection details. Minutes of tonight's meeting, as well as audio and video recordings, will be available later at nashuanh.gov/agenda center. Select Zoning Board of Adjustment. If anyone has a problem accessing the meeting, please call 603-589-3056 and they will help you connect. In the event that the public is unable to access the meeting via the methods mentioned above, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. The chair is in control of the meeting. To the extent practicable and advisable, the board will follow the procedures as identified in its bylaws. The applicant will present their case for 15 minutes, followed by questions by the board. Next, persons wishing to speak in favor or with questions or opposition will be asked to speak for up to 5 minutes. If there are questions or opposition, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present a response. Finally, one and only one person with questions or in opposition will be permitted to speak again before the board deliberates and determines an outcome. City staff will monitor a timer visible on room monitors and Zoom. The chair will notify speakers as time is expiring. If you are participating by Zoom and wish to speak when public input is requested, please use the raise hand option, which can be found under reactions on a computer or the more menu on a phone. The chair will call you in turn. Please use the lower hand option when done. Also, please mute your microphone until called to speak. Note that all votes that are taken during this meeting will be done by roll call. Tonight, we will be hearing requests for deviation from the Nashua Zoning Code in the form of applications for special exceptions and an equitable waiver. A special exception is a request that seeks permission to do something the zoning ordinance permits only under special circumstances. To grant a special exception, 5 points of law are required to be met. These are outlined in the application and will be summarized in board motions. An equitable waiver is a request to, an after-the-fact request to permit a minor violation of the zoning code that could not, was not noticed before the action was taken. Per the City of Nashua bylaws and State of New Hampshire revised statutes, a minimum of 3 or more affirmative votes are required to approve any motion. The board will hear all scheduled cases if a quorum of 3 voting board members is present at this meeting, and we have 5 voting board members. Any citizen has the right to contest the decision that this board makes. Should we make a decision that you believe is an error, you have the right to request a rehearing. A written rehearing request must be received by the City of Nashua Planning Department within 30 calendar days from the date of decision. Should this board not grant a rehearing request, you can file an appeal directly to the New Hampshire Superior Court. Please contact Mr. Falk of the Planning Department for more information, and we do have a rehearing request at the end of this meeting. So for this meeting, we have the following full board members in attendance. We have myself, Steve Lionel, I'm the vice chair. We have Mr. Jack Currier, who serves as our clerk, and on Zoom we have Mr. J.P. Boucher. In the room we have Mr. Jay Mancara and Mr. Josh Neely as our alternates. And since we have 5 members total in attendance, all 5 will be voting on every case. In addition to board members, we have with us Mr. Carter Falk, Deputy Planning Manager, and Ms. Kate Poirier, Zoning Coordinator. We'll start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. For board members participating by Zoom, please state whether there is anyone in the room with you, which is required under the right to know law, and state your reason for not attending in person. So, Jack Currier.
Present.
J.P. Boucher.
He had to bow out.
JP was on Zoom.
Was on, and now
having
he's off again.
problems with
Okay,
Zoom,
well, we'll
so
see if he comes back.
he's off.
Jay Mancara.
Present.
Josh Neely.
Present.
Okay, alternates. Mr. Falk, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, there are not.
Okay, so I will now read the first case in the record. Which case are you, sir? 7 Saddleback, okay, so that's our first case. Very good. Owner is Saddleback Estates LLC, address 7 Saddleback Drive, sheet 3, lot 137, requesting equitable waiver pursuant to RSA 674-33A relative to Land Use Code Section 190-16, Table 16-3, to maintain a foundation encroaching 10 inches into the 20-foot required front yard setback to a future street not yet named on a corner lot. This is the R9 zone, Ward 7. Please give your name and address for the record and walk us through your application.
My name is Austin DeSantis. I represent the owners and I'm the general contractor down at Saddleback Estates LLC on Saddleback Drive. We had poured a foundation on 7 Saddleback, which is on the corner of a future street, which is now a paper street, and Saddleback Drive. When we had the as-built done for the foundation, we noticed it encroached the left setback, which is a front setback for the future street. As soon as we heard this, Carter and Katie were kind enough to steer me in the right direction and put me in front of you. So that is the entire gist of it.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Mr. Carter?
What is the future street going to connect to, just out of curiosity? Is there a house in the back or something?
So Mr. Whitney's house, which is right next door, further up the hill there,
Yeah.
there's a proposed subdivision where his house sits.
Oh.
So in the event he were to subdivide, that street would connect to that future subdivision.
Oh, okay.
So utilities are stubbed there
Okay, thanks.
for that purpose.
Any more questions from the board? Not seeing any? Okay, you may have a seat.
Thank you.
Well, let's see, since there's nobody else in the room and there's nobody on Zoom, I'm not going to ask for favorable or opposition testimony because there's nobody to ask for.
That's a first?
That is not usual, yes. So I will close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Mancaro, your comments?
I support the request. I think the encroachment is minimal. It does appear to have been the result of a good faith error, and there is no street there now. So I suppose a measuring error was more likely without a well staked out right away. And it does seem as though the cost of having to remove the foundation or cutting it off would exceed the benefit that we would gain.
Good, thank you. Mr. Neely?
Well, I'd like to thank the applicant. Most folks would not have reported that, so thank you very much. I know obviously it was a very stressful situation for you. I'm in favor of this application, primarily for what Mr. Mancaro just said. The cost of removing those 10 inches or changing anything up like that would just be prohibitive. These folks are building a full subdivision. The housing is well needed in this area. I'm a firm believer the quicker the better we can get this housing up. It works well for everybody. So for those reasons, I'm in full favor of this application.
Thank you. Mr. Courier?
For the reasons stated by my colleagues, I'm also in favor, and I'd just like to reiterate, I think an error like this is perhaps more apt to happen when there's not a clear street, a future street, because it's foggier to stake it out. And it probably had something to do with why it's 10 inches off.
Yes. And I'm also in support of the motion, of the request. Is there somebody here who would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Well, you have to write things down, so.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Neely,
All
thank
right.
you.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the equitable waiver for the applicant, Saddleback Estates LLC owner, 7 Saddleback Drive, Sheet 3, Lot 137, pursuant to RSA 674-33A, Table 16-3, to maintain a foundation encroaching 10 inches into the 20-foot required front setback to a future street, which is not yet named on a corner lot, is located in the R9 zone in Ward 7. The reasons for this, as discussed by the members here, is that we do not feel that a small encroachment like this will negatively affect the newly built street when it does occur. It will not affect any of the neighbors, and the cost would be prohibitive to eliminate the the foundation as is.
And Mr. Mancara, thank you for your second. Any discussion of the motion? Ready to vote? Mr. Mancara, how do you vote?
Mr. Mancara votes in favor.
Mr. Neely, how do you vote?
Mr. Neely votes in favor.
Mr. Courier, how do you vote?
Mr. Courier votes in favor.
And I, Mr. Lionel, votes in favor. That's 4-0. Congratulations, your equitable waiver has been approved. Please be aware there's a 30-day window of appeal. Contact the planning department if you have any questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, you're good. Your case is now. You're just in time.
Just in time, okay. So we get to do all of this, okay. So, case number 2, owner Paul and Jose Dudley.
Jose.
Jose?
Jose, yeah.
Jose.
Thank you.
Got it, thank you. Address 73 Musket Drive, Sheet C, Lot 1607, requesting special exception from Land Use Code Section 190-111 through 190-117 for after-the-fact tree removal within a 40-foot other wetland buffer and wetland. And this is the R30 Zone, Ward 5. So whichever one of you would like to present the case, or both of you, step up to the lectern and give your name and address for the record, and tell us what you'd like to do.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Dudley. I live at this property. We bought this property in May of 2020. Unbeknownst to us, didn't know anything about the wetlands, and we had some trees that were leaning over our neighbor's yard who had small kids. And the reason we cut the trees was because the one tree had rotted and was falling over and caught in the crutch of another tree. So we felt it was necessary to keep safety first. And so I had somebody come in and remove some trees. While they were doing it, they said, well, we can remove these other trees too. And I said, well, let me talk to my neighbor, because I know he was interested in excavating behind his house. So we got involved in that. Long story short, what we're trying to do now is do the right thing, make sure that we make up for the mistakes that we made, unbeknownst to us, follow the rules, and make sure we're doing the right thing. So that's basically the case. What I know is we've been asked to plant some bushes to replace in where the trees were, and we're going to do that. We've also been asked to put up signs so this mistake doesn't happen if we decide to sell in the future, right? So, and we're willing to do that also. So, other than that, that's basically what we're trying to achieve here.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Mr. Neely?
Mr. Dudley, it's apparent from reading the documentation earlier, especially from the Conservation Commission, you were very frustrated. Where did you guys end up with that final sign that's in the middle? I know there was some back and forth about putting signs in every 50 feet, and you were kind of going back and forth about that one that was going to be in the middle of your yard. Where'd you guys end up on that?
I agreed to do it because at this point here, I felt that we would, well, so first of all, I think everybody that owns wetlands should have some type of signage that marks it clearly so that, you know, someone buying the property is aware of it. Very expensive, but it is what it is. So we're going to do our part to make sure that it's clearly marked. The edge boundaries I don't have a problem with. The middle one, I have a very small backyard. It's smack dab in the middle of my fire pit. So it is what it is. We'll make it work. So other than, I just said, you know what, we'll make it happen.
Okay. And so the Conservation Commission had asked for looks like 3 bullet points. I assume you folks are completely in agreement. You're going to be in compliance with what the Conservation Commission voted for?
Correct.
Excellent. Thank you.
And Mr. Dudley, there are 9 wetland special conditions. Have you been shown this list?
I have.
That you have agreed, and do you agree to them?
Yes.
Okay. We need to have that for the record.
I had a question.
Mr. Courier?
Just another question on the sign. So is there proposed, or are there 3 signs, one on the left, middle, and right, or?
Currently, there's nothing.
Nothing.
It's the way we bought it. It's still nothing. Interestingly enough, there's a wire at this buffer point that's buried in the ground. It's a wire was put there. We found it. Don't know what it was there for, but now it's just coincidentally, it seems to be at the right spot where these signs would occur.
It probably was put there because they have these like metal detectors that can identify buried, I know that sometimes sewer lines, they put the wire above it, but it's something that can be found later.
Yeah, but it happens to be right on the line. That's what I'm saying to you.
Yes,
Is it
I know,
just-
but I'm saying that somebody put it there deliberately.
Well, that's good news. It's a shame you didn't put a marker on either side.
Yeah, that's understandable, absolutely
Anyway,
understandable.
we want to do the right thing. I appreciate wetlands. I appreciate conservation land. I am all about that. Had we known this, it would have been a totally different approach. So I want to correct this so the mistake doesn't get made by somebody else. That's all.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
Did I
from
answer the
board?
sign question?
Well, I think what the agreement was with yourselves and the Conservation Commission was that there would be a total of 3 posts.
Correct.
Like left, right, middle.
That's the agreement, yes.
Okay.
I believe they're 4x4 posts with some type of signage. I just don't know who provides that signage yet. No one's made that clear to me yet.
We can
So-
help them.
We'll help you.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Not seeing it? Okay, you may have a seat.
Thank you.
Since again, there is nobody else in the room and there's nobody on Zoom to ask for oppositions or questions or in favor, we'll close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Courier, your comments?
So I'm favorable to the application. I don't know if I've ever disagreed with what the Conservation Commission has recommended, but I struggle with the sign in the center of the lawn, because years ago, I served on the Conservation Commission, and the signs were kind of coming in, and in my mind, the idea of a sign every 50 feet, like say, for example, the McCarthy Middle School is being developed now, and there's a field that's on the edge of wetlands. So these posts, which are a 4x4 post with a little placard on it, I mean, it's not like a street sign or anything. If you take a walk like on the Terrell property or the north end, you'll come upon them sooner or later. But the idea of like every 50 feet is like if you say you have this soccer field or something, you might see down the bank like, a series of these signs that kind of keys you off like, oh, okay, this is where the wetlands begin. And so I guess I'm struggling with the Conservation Commission, wanting to have one in the center of the lawn. I believe this property was developed before the wetland regulations were in place. And in my mind, one on the left and one on the right is a pretty good indicator that, there's a line going from left to right. It does seem like these wetlands kind of come out a little more in the middle. But the other situation where the homeowner has agreed to put the flagged survey, in the Hillsborough County Registry of Deeds, I think goes a long way to memorializing that there are wetlands in the back. So I guess it's a long way of me saying I'm in favor of this application. I'd prefer to not have the stipulation of the sign in the center of the lawn, but on the left and right.
I don't
And that's
know
where I'm
whether
at.
we're doing a stipulation.
I guess I was saying from the applicant's testimony that there are 3 proposed signs,
Yeah,
left, middle, and
yeah.
right. And from the record of the Conservation Commission minutes, I read the same thing Mr. Naheely did, was that, as stated tonight, that there's, a willingness to do it, but, not enthusiastic about having the sign in the middle. That's why I feel it's just my 2 cents, and I'm looking forward to hearing what 3 other people say.
Thank you. Mr. Neely?
So I'm in favor of the application. These folks I really feel bad for what the Conservation Commission put them through. I also read these extensive notes from the Conservation Commission, and it seemed like it was a well over-the-top conversation than it needed to be to get some signage in there for folks who were just trying to do the right thing. I'm fully in favor of this, primarily, You know, they said they're going to follow everything the Conservation Commission says, which is great. They're not affecting any of their neighbors. There's no reason that we would deny this at all. As to the signage in the middle of the lawn, if we have the ability to move in the direction to say that's not necessary, I certainly would agree with that. I like to put myself in the same position. I'd probably not be a happy camper either if I had to put a pole right in the middle of my small yard. So if that's the direction that the board is going to go, I would certainly support that as well.
Mr. Mancara?
I also support the application. I do think that this was, an error unintentionally on the part of the homeowners. And I agree. I think having a wetlands buffer sign in the middle of the yard, I think is a little over the top. I would support the application with the stipulation that either the buffer markers aren't required or that the homeowners will take their best efforts to reasonably mark the buffer in the way that works the best, for themselves and for the use of their property.
I'm also in support of the application, and I would support some relief in terms of that center sign. Mr. Falk, are we able to do that?
You can. If you don't agree with one of the stipulations that the Concom has provided, you can say we support like numbers 2 and 3, and number 1, perhaps it's just on the side, the left and right side. You don't have to. Just know that the Conservation Commission may question that.
Yeah, because reading the minutes, they were very insistent on that third sign. And we don't typically buck what they say, but I have to agree with my colleagues that this does seem unreasonable.
You don't have to, they're a recommending body. You don't have to agree with all of their stipulations. You don't have to.
Okay.
But just give valid reasons why you don't think the one post in the center is required or necessary. And
Okay. Yeah, I would be in favor of going in that direction. Do everybody
Make a
agree?
motion?
Mr. Curry, are you going to make the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Short agenda, I'll type later.
Okay,
Let me
thank you.
get ready. So I'm going to make a motion on behalf of Paul and Jose Dudley, 73 Musket Drive. The request is a special exception from Land Use Code Sections 190, 111 through 190, 117 for an after-the-fact tree removal within the 40-foot other wetland buffer and wetland. This is in Ward 5. The special exception is listed in the table of uses, which I just mentioned. Board finds it will not create undue traffic congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. This after-the-fact tree removal really has no impact on either of those two. Board finds, that this will not overload public water, drainage, sewer, or other municipal systems. The 9 special regulations, the 9 special wetland regulations have been fulfilled by the applicant's testimony. And the board finds that this will not impair the integrity or be out of character with the neighborhood or be detrimental to the health, morals, or welfare of the residents. Special conditions. I make a special condition or a stipulation that item 1, I'd also like to add the record, the January 3rd, 2023 approval of the Conservation Commission to this record. That approval has 3 stipulations. The applicant has agreed to abide by all 3. The zoning board here, I make a stipulation that the wetland markers shall be installed. The stipulation reads, wetland markers shall be installed along the wetland buffer every 50 feet, and the understanding is that there'll be one on the left of the backyard property, one in the middle, about 50 feet, and then one on the right side. I make a stipulation to waive the requirement of the center marker so that there be a wetland marker on the left and the right, but not the center. And with that stipulation, I make the motion to approve.
And I'll second. Any discussion of the motion? Ready to vote? Mr. Mancara, how do you vote?
Mr. Mancara votes in favor.
Mr. Neely, how do you vote?
Mr. Neely votes in favor.
Mr. Courier, how do you vote?
Mr. Courier votes in favor.
And I, Mr. Lionel, vote in favor. It's 4-0. Your special exception has been approved with the relief that we say that you don't need to put that center marker in. This can be appealed within 30 days. Please contact the Planning Department if you have any questions, and work with them about actually getting the markers.
Oh, great, thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. I appreciate it.
Have a good night.
You too.
Okay. So we have a rehearing request. Make sure I'm doing this in the right order. Just a moment.
And here's my drive safe, everyone.
You also.
Okay, yes, rehearing request is next. So we have a rehearing request from the denial of the January 10th, 2023 meeting. Stephen Fritz, owner, 105 Vermont Avenue, Sheet 4, Lot 25, requested a variance from Land Use Code Section 190-17E1 to exceed maximum driveway width, 24 feet permitted, 40 feet existing, requesting to maintain an additional 16 feet of a recently added driveway width. This was in the R9 zone, Ward 7. So we're going to go through each of these points and have a roll call vote on each of them. Are you ready to write this down, Mr. Courier?
Just give me
Yep.
one moment.
Absolutely.
All right, ready.
Okay. So the first item was there any procedural error? This includes improper notice, denying someone the right to be heard, et cetera. First, we're going to have a discussion of each item to see what people think, and then we'll do the vote. So, does anybody have any comments they want to make about this? I'm not seeing.
Well, I guess I don't, on the first question?
Yeah, on the first question, yes.
I just throw out that I don't believe there were any procedural errors. I think there was proper notice given for the 2 weeks prior and at the meeting.
It doesn't appear that any errors were alleged.
Mr. Neely, you might as well say whether or not you think there were errors.
So I concur with everybody else. I do not believe there was any procedural errors.
Okay, and I also don't think there were any procedural errors. So now we're going to vote on that item. Mr. Mancara, how do you vote? Were there any procedural errors?
Mr. Mancara votes no.
Mr. Neely,
Mr. Neely votes no.
Mr. Courier,
Mr. Courier votes no.
and Mr. Lionel, myself, vote no. Okay. So that's 0 to 4 is no. Okay, so the second question, was it an illegal decision? In other words, did the board fail to completely address each of the points of law required for the special exception and/or variance? Of course, the applicant has made a statement that believes that we did. I assume all of you have read that.
I guess I have a question. So this was in our package, this rehearing request. Was this left on the table?
Yes,
tonight?
yes.
That was the response. I believe staff emailed you the response that Attorney Shepard sent in about the 4
Yes.
rehearing questions. It didn't come in when we sent the package out.
Okay.
So he emailed us later on, like a few days after we sent the package out. So this is their response to these questions.
Oh, I'm sorry, you say Shepard's response?
The
Attorney
The
Shepard.
attorney, their
Okay.
attorney,
Yeah.
the
Robert
applicant's
Shepard.
attorney.
Okay.
Mr. Mancara, your comments on this item?
Well, I disagree with the assertion. I don't think an improper standard was followed for unnecessary hardship. You know, I do recall this case, and one of the factors that really jumped out, in my view, was the fact that the property, you know, really wasn't distinguishable from surrounding properties. The setback of the house was consistent, the lot size was consistent, there was nothing unusual about it, nor was there anything unusual about it that was presented. So I don't think the decision was illegal. I think the board, you know, correctly followed the 5 points of law.
Thank you. Mr. Neely?
I do not believe the decision was illegal. I clearly remember we had quite a spirited conversation about this property. You know, this was an after-the-fact application. He had significantly widened his driveway. We had a very long discussion about how we would have voted if he had come ahead of time. We had a discussion of how many of us had looked at that neighborhood to look for alternatives where other folks were kind of paving around the sides of their houses to stay within code. This gentleman didn't have any good answers for us, just kept kind of shrugging his shoulders. We did ask him who paved for means of education to kind of find out if he was led astray and we could help him out, that he could get some justice from whoever that person was or group was. He refused to answer that question. If you remember Mr. Lionel, specifically you were the one asking.
I do remember, yes.
I think we had a very long conversation about this, and we clearly presented the reasons why we thought that driveway should not stay at the 40 feet. He kept talking about how he's running a business out of his home, and that's great. But, he doesn't need to be able to park 6 vehicles, which is what I could get 6 vehicles in that driveway right now, and he still has a Connex box. And he did specifically point at, I believe, Massachusetts Avenue, which was around the corner from him, with a very large driveway. I know we had discussions with staff that night that, had that, we did not know if that house had gone through the process, and, when you drive by, you don't know who's been through this process. So we did not want to have any more houses in that neighborhood with larger than necessary driveways. And also, we had talked that night about how we have been very consistent in my short tenure about really looking at the width of driveways, and we have certainly, unfortunately, had to turn down some other folks who probably had some more compelling reasons than this gentleman did. So that was a long-winded way to say that I do not believe anything was illegal in this decision.
Thank you. Mr. Courier?
I also concur that I believe that it was a legal decision. I think the board did consider the points of law, on unnecessary hardship. I think, as you both have stated, the board found that this property was not distinguishable from other properties in any way that deserved significant driveway relief, and that, you could increase the parking amount on asphalt by not having a wider driveway or going around the garage. We spoke about that, as some neighbors have done. The spirit and intent of the ordinance, I think we spoke about that, and in that we concurred that, yeah, there's probably some legal or illegal wider driveways in the neighborhood, give or take some, feet or miles, but that doesn't mean that the board dismisses, the 24-foot requirement. In terms of the public interest and substantial justice, I think we spoke to both those points as well. So I don't think it was an illegal decision either.
And I have nothing more to add. I don't think it was an illegal decision. So we'll vote on this one. Mr. Courier, do you believe this was an illegal decision?
I do not.
Mr. Neely, do you believe this was an illegal decision?
Mr. Neely votes no.
Mr. McCara?
Mr. McCara votes no.
And I, Mr. Lionel, vote no. That's 4-0. We do not believe it was an illegal decision. Okay, next one. Does the request for a rehearing contain any new information not presented or available to the board? The applicant's attorney says that there was not any new information. So that's pretty clear. Anybody have comments? Otherwise, I'll just go right to voting.
Yeah, I think just put it out there that I concur that there's no new information developed at the hearing.
Okay. Mr. Mancara, was there any new information in the rehearing request?
Mr. McCara votes no.
Mr. Neely?
Mr. Neely votes no.
Mr. Courier?
Mr. Courier votes no.
And I, Mr. Lionel, vote no. So again, that's 0-4. Okay. Last one. Is there anything which would or could cause the board to make a different decision? Mr. McCary, your comments?
No, nothing that I can see.
Mr. Neely?
As discussed earlier, it does not fit into the scope of the neighborhood, and a 40-foot wide driveway is not a reasonable use.
Mr. Courier?
I concur that a 40-foot driveway is not a reasonable use. If it were reasonable on this property, it would be reasonable on all the properties in the neighborhood because they're so consistent. And I think, the board should not be considering the 24-foot as being too small. That's what the legislative body has decided, and that's what we take as a law and override it only when, the situation warrants, and I don't see that here.
Thank you. And I also don't think there's anything that would change my decision from the previous hearing. So let's see. Mr. Courier, how do you vote on this one?
Mr. Courier votes no.
Mr. Neely?
Mr. Neely votes no.
Mr. Mancara?
Mr. Mancara votes no.
And I, Mr. Lionel, votes no. That's 0-4, so the board denies the rehearing request.
You have to make a separate.
Yeah, actually, there's a final
One
motion.
overall.
Is there a final motion?
Yeah, on the record here, there is.
Oh, where is it?
Well, it's on
One to rule them all.
record.
Like one overall motion.
Oh, an overall
Overall
motion?
motion
Yes.
to.
Okay, yes, all right, so we're going to make an overall motion to deny the rehearing. I'll make that motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Courier, thank you for your second. Mr. Mancara, how do you vote?
Mr. Mancara votes in favor of the motion to deny.
Mr. Neely?
Mr. Neely votes in favor of the motion to deny.
Mr. Courier?
Mr. Courier votes in favor of the motion to
And
deny.
I, Mr. Lionel, vote in favor of the motion to deny. That's 4-0. The motion to rehear the case is denied. I don't know who needs to hear it, but, well, their next step is the Superior Court. So, we have minutes from the February 14th meeting. Has everybody had a chance to look at them over? Anybody see any changes necessary, edits, omissions? No?
No.
Okay. I have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second? Thank you, Mr. Neely, and Mr. Mancara, for your motion. Mr. Mancara, how do you vote?
Mr. Mancara votes in favor.
Mr. Neely, how do you vote?
Mr. Neely votes in favor.
Mr. Courier, how do you vote?
Mr. Courier votes in favor.
And I, Mr. Lionel, vote in favor. That's 4-0 in favor of the minutes. We do have an agenda for the next meeting on March 14th. Does anybody see any regional impact on the March 14th agenda?
I see no regional impact.
Mr. Neely?
I have not seen that, any regional impact.
Mr. Mancara?
No regional impact.
And I see no regional impact, so there is none. I guess that's it, then. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Courier, thank you for your motion to adjourn. We are adjourned at 7:08.
Thank you.
Thank you for pinch hitting
Recording
there,
stopped.
Mr. Lionel.
Thank everybody for coming out on such a wonderful night.